Welcome to the Knights of the Wrong Table podcast, folks. As always, I'm John.
And I am Randall.
And just wanted to get started today, kind of give a little bit of backstory on how Randall and I know each other. Back from Pacific Lutheran University, if you were paying attention to where we went to school when you're listening to episode 1. So we kind of talked about our calling to the podcast, but we didn't really talk about our calling to each other. Randall, did you want to elaborate a little bit to start on that?
Yeah, we met back in college in Tacoma, Washington, Pacific Lutheran University. I went straight out of high school down to originally from Southern California, then into the Vancouver, Washington area, Portland, Oregon area. Then I moved up there for college, played football for a couple of years. That's where I met John. PLU, if people don't know, is pretty well known for pretty much its academics and its football program for being a D3 school, nationally recognized, four-time national champions. John, back
Three. I think it's
NAIA and one NCAA, I think.
Yep. And then
National
now their
champions.
softball team as well.
Yeah,
National champion
mad
softball.
good at disc golf as well. Really good at disc golf and ultimate teams, I hear.
And they actually had an on-campus golf course too, which I didn't ever play because I didn't play golf back then. But
I did. It was very nice and very cheap. It was like $3 if you went to the university. Yeah. So during the summer, it was the thing to do is you just go there shirtless and bring a bunch of beers.
I wish I would have got started earlier in golf and had the opportunity to play there in college, because my game would be a lot better than it is.
Yeah, right I was lucky enough to get into it really young. I played it in high school, actually, in Southern California. It's opposite seasons for men's football, so I was able to play golf in my off season. And then when I moved to Washington State, it's the same season as men's football, so I had to sacrifice. Obviously, being a gigantic individual like myself, I went with football. But I kind of kicked myself.
How tall are you, Randall?
I'm like 6'6". I'm like 300 pounds.
It was funny when we were at one of our get-togethers. I can't remember if it was the guys' trip or one of the bachelor parties at Jeff's cabin, when he has the big, like the raised deck. I think it's like at least a foot or a foot and a half off the ground, and I was grilling, and you're standing off the deck, and I'm like, oh, is this what it's like to be you? This must be nice.
Perfectly eye level, just eye to eye.
Well, no, I was taller than you by still less than you are taller than me, but it was like, oh, is this how you feel?
It feels good. It feels good to tower over people. When you're as tall as I am, I'm not even that tall, but when you're as tall as I am, or people are taller, they'll immediately know. When you stand next to someone who's taller than you, it's like, I don't like it, because you're used to being taller than everyone else.
Yeah.
But yeah, met at football. I went on to play lacrosse for a couple of years as well at the university. Traveled for the university to Cuba and England and France, all through university class studies. I graduated with a degree in history with an emphasis in genocide and New American slavery, New World slavery. So obviously extremely applicable topics to unfortunate things happening all over the world today, but not really applicable to real life when it comes to, job opportunities. You could teach with those kind of degrees, or you can give lectures, but that's about it.
Yeah. Well, I'm not using my degrees either. So,
yeah.
And then also, so we're connected through PLU football. But then we're also connected through another friend that led me to your guys' house, hanging out over there, having some pretty hypothetical conversations and some lofty conversations and such.
Philosophical.
That's what we're looking for. Philosophical conversations. And then also kind of getting out of college and into the real world. And we didn't see each other, I would say, for quite a while, until we saw each other a couple times here and there. But then, was last year my first year in the fantasy football?
I think 2 years ago. This is your third year now, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, we've had a long running fantasy football group that goes back to like 2010, 2011, something like that, I think.
Yeah, and it's cool, you
Um,
guys. It's not a legacy format where you keep players from year to year, but it is cool. You guys have the championship system is cool with the trophy and the ring. So if you win, you get your name on the trophy. You get to keep that, and then you also get a championship ring. And
yeah.
then we implemented this year for the first time the last place punishment, which
Yep.
is a I can't remember. There were the options. I think I know what it is, but what is it?
So the options were you have to run a 5K of your choice with a shirt on that is like one we order for you.
Yeah.
Not that you're going to lose, but whoever loses. The other one was you have to eat 10 times the amount of hot dogs that you had for loses over the overall season. And you can't eat anything else except hot dogs. So breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you have to get that amount of hot dogs out of the way before you ate anything else. And then the third one, I think was you had to go sit in like a Waffle House or something like that for a long time,
Like all day, right?
like all day. Yeah. The
It
one
ended up
we
being the
we went,
5K, right?
yeah, the one we went with was the 5K. I voted for the hot dogs. I thought that'd been really funny. You can eat them in a bunch of different ways. You make like hot dogs and spaghetti or something. But yeah, there's some health concerns. So we'll go 5K. It's a lot healthier. It's a lot better for you.
For sure. No, it's been a lot of fun. It was came I came in second place last year. That was cool. Wish I would have freaking won it, but
Oh, I
my
wish you would have won it too. We were pulling for you.
yeah.
The
So
the guy who ended up winning is an out of towner as we call it. So we had to ship the trophy down to California. There was a
yeah,
mistake actually. Funny enough, we put on the trophy. So you win the championship ring. I have a couple of them. I keep them down on the mantelpiece for obvious
of
reasons.
course.
But the trophy goes from owner to owner as they win and just gets the name updated on it. And the trophy shop accidentally put the wrong date for the year that he won. For our league member Chris. Um, and so he wants to keep the date wrong on there, like they do in the Stanley Cup, as just like an error, and
Hmm.
we live on.
That's
But
cool.
I told him we'll only do that if he wins it again, so that way he's back to back and it has the same date. We'll have the other date right there, so it's just the errors right there, which I think is really
Dude,
funny. We'll do
yeah.
that.
Well,
Otherwise, it'd be
hopefully
really
that doesn't
confusing.
happen. I'm
Yeah,
not.
he
I'm not.
won't win back to back. I'm the only one that's won back to back, so we'll see.
I was thinking I was going to get started out a lot worse than I am this year. I'm 2-1 now. Well, it's Monday, right? Yeah. So I'm 2-1. I We don't have anyone playing in the Monday game for either of our teams, I don't think. But I drafted two running backs back to back with Saquon and Jonathan Taylor,
Taylor's been
and
going off this season. He's
going
been
off.
unreal.
But dude, I forgot the fact that our league is the flex where you can have two
Ultimate
quarterbacks.
flex.
Totally forgot about that, and I don't have shit for QBs. I got
Well, it's
Darnold.
good because there's been so many quarterback injuries that, other people don't
Pick
have shit
someone
for
else. Yeah.
QBs any either. I tried to make a
So
trade with someone in our league this week because they lost one of their quarterbacks, and so I was trying to trade my quarterback off my bench. And our league is just so just to put in perspective for people watching, our league is very cutthroat. There's no waiver wire, so you can just pick someone up as soon as someone goes down. And it's also two quarterbacks, so people, it gets very shisty. But trades
can be two
very,
quarterbacks. Can be two
yeah, you
quarterbacks if
can
you
be two
want it.
quarterbacks. It's ultimate
Yeah.
flex, but people get very shisty, and it's the people are so worried to make a trade of who will come out on top that trades are exceedingly rare.
Yes.
They don't happen. Everything is injury influenced. It's crazy.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun for sure. And I don't want to give away my magic sauce too much, but I always try and go for a good, don't say who, you know who it is, but for my kicker right off the get go. At least if he's still available by like the fifth or sixth round, I'll pick him up. So
I'm currently sitting in first place, the only 3-0 team, all
you're the
inclusive
only
island
3-0.
resort is woo.
I'm still
We're
off of last year's when I was and side note for last year, I had to do the auto draft last year because I was working.
Yeah.
So my name from last year was the Automagic Formula. I didn't change it for this year just because I felt like it was still good to keep in there that second place auto drafted out of necessity last year. So
I always like our silly names that I try to come up with at the beginning of the season. I've been doing it for years and years because I started playing fantasy sports when I was in like middle school. We had a math teacher that divided the class into three different fantasy baseball leagues, like by rows, like this league, this row is this league, this row is this league, and this row is this league, and they all played each other all season. So me and
fantasy
all my friends
baseball.
that were sitting in baseball, yeah. So me and all my
Oh
friends that were
God,
sitting in the same
that's a
area,
tough deal.
it was so cool. And so we did that for years and years, and we kept the teacher in our fantasy league for like an additional 15 years or something. He passed away just after college.
That's fair.
And I don't have to get to play with him anymore, but crazy fun. It's super fun. People are missing out if you don't play.
Fantasy football is, I think, just the right level for me to kind of stay tapped into it. Anything more than the once a week thing, like if I'm doing fantasy baseball, that would be, or hockey or whatever. Not
It's crazy
not for
how
me.
it's crazy how fantasy sports has led into like a multi-billion-dollar betting industry and like gotten betting legalized like across the United States, whereas like betting used to be seen as like especially sports betting used to be seen as like super
Super shady.
taboo.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now it's like everywhere. But if you travel, like I don't know how much you've been out of the country lately, but if you travel abroad to like Ireland or the UK or a lot of places in Europe, you'll see that like betting is like a plague. Like they have these small betting parlors where you can come in and it's not all done over the phone like it is here. It's like a lot more in your face and it's
Like
crazy.
New
Yeah,
York
like
Stock
how much.
Exchange in the 90s kind of sports betting.
Yeah, Canada is
Yeah.
like that too. Canada has a lot of like these small betting parlor places, and it seemed like it's really shady and seedy feeling when you walk in there, and you're just making like a
Yeah.
sports bet. But
So I think that knowing my personality is I am trying to keep the lid on opening up the Pandora's box of sports betting for as long as I can.
yeah, luckily you can't do it in Washington State. You'd have to get a VPN or what people do here. It's funny on Sunday mornings, like you can set your clock to them. Just on the other side of the Columbia River, people will be crossing the river, pulling over on Airport Way, and then they get on their phone, and it works because they're in Portland, and then they make their pets, and then they go back across the river.
We got the EQC in Muckleshoot close enough, for the in-person sports book, but yeah, not the online stuff.
Yeah,
Nothing like
the online
FanDuel
stuff
or
is
anything like
dangerous,
that.
man. That leads to a lot of people making quick decisions that lose a lot of money.
Yep. So we're gonna get jumped into our podcast here today. As the episode implies, how did we get here? And I think that we have to take a trip in the time machine back to 2016, and this is where uh, uh, Randall and I kind of have different viewpoints and don't really agree on this, but um, the 2016 primary, uh, the Democratic primary in
Feels
2016.
like so long ago.
I
Doesn't that feel
know.
like it? I mean, it was a long time
It was
ago,
the
but
last
doesn't it?
time I had hope.
It feels like, oh, like politically speaking, like how far and how many things have happened since then. It's like trying to remember back to the things that mattered back then, and like it's like, ha, if only that were our problems back then.
All right. So yeah, so there's this idea that I had back in 2016 about Bernie Sanders or Trump. So if you listen to the last podcast, um, I did mention that in 2016 I voted for Trump. And I think one of the reasons I did was kind of influenced by, I know Randall's kind of squirming at that statement,
No, I'm just sore. I've been working.
but I was of the mindset Bernie or Trump because I kind of felt and was wanting somewhat of a political revolution either way to get someone who wasn't a part of the true status quo, um, and how it's really led to, or at the time, it led to alienation of Bernie, but then also the same idea then led to the rise of Trump.
Well, yeah, from so you didn't vote in the 2016 Democratic primaries then because you were a registered Republican.
Correct, and I still am. I've never changed it,
Right.
but yeah.
So I voted. Um, I don't really care about my voting history being known. I voted all the way back. My first vote in for public office was actually for Hillary Clinton against Barack Obama in the 2008 Democratic primaries or 2007 Democratic primaries, and then voted for Barack Obama for president. Um, then again for Barack Obama for president, and then Democratic primaries 2016, 2015 was a really wide field. I initially was I'm trying to remember if it was 2016 or 2018. I'm pretty sure she was around in 2016. Joe Webb was the U.S. Secretary of Defense, or not Defense, excuse me, of the Navy, and I was really into him. But he dropped out early and endorsed Hillary Clinton, and I and ultimately ended up supporting Hillary Clinton in the 2016 Democratic primaries against Bernie Sanders. And then in 2020, I supported Amy Klobuchar, tough old bird out of Minnesota, announcing her campaign in the blizzard in Minnesota, and she fell out and endorsed Joe Biden, so I supported Joe Biden. Um, but yeah, the Hillary Clinton 2016 run against Bernie Sanders. There's a lot of people that think that, and again, disagreements, that think that that election was like stolen, and like elections being stolen in this day and age is kind of just a ridiculous played out, thing. It's like people say that the powers that be, the Democratic Party, wanted Hillary Clinton to win. And you have to look at how the Democratic Party operates. So the Democratic Party has super delegates, whereas the Republican Party does not have super delegates. The super delegates make up 15 or 20%. I think it's 15% of the delegates as a whole for the voting for that block for the party. So that the real reason that super delegates exist at the basis format for it is to prevent the outside takeover of the party from like a centrist nationalistic or populistic viewpoint. So if Bernie
AKA
Sanders,
on the other side.
oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so also known then from the other side is Trump. So Trump was that populist takeover
Well, yeah,
candidate.
that's what I'm
But
saying. So at the same time, in that election though against Bernie Sanders and Hillary, Bernie was not a registered Democrat. Bernie had never been a registered Democrat. Bernie is a registered and famously registered
independent.
independent, and that's perfectly fine. But it means when he then runs as a Democrat, those 15% of the party that votes pretty much automatically are going to throw their support behind the party candidate rather than the outside candidate. Now, if Bernie ran again the next time, those super delegates essentially would be available to him because he'd be running as a Democrat. He'd be a Democrat member through the party. But as an outside independent, trying to stop a mass movement like Bernie had at that time, everyone was feeling the burn. Put a bird on it, and here in Portland, Oregon, the bird landed on his podium, and everyone lost their minds because a bird landed on his podium. I don't know if you remember that.
I
Um,
know.
it's a Portland thing. Put a bird on it is what we say here, but it came from Portlandia, the show. But the thing is like that mass populist movement was essentially prevented from taking over the Democratic Party and its values uh, by the superdelegates. Now, if you
Yeah.
look, like you were saying, the other side of the coin to the Republican Party, they don't have superdelegates. So when it came time for George Bush, or excuse me, Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz and all these other party candidates, everyone would have thought Jeb Bush was going to win that election because Jeb Bush should have been the party choice. But he didn't, because that party doesn't have superdelegates to throw support behind. It gets taken over by a mass fervor of populism. And frankly, those generally don't work out very well when it comes to leadership quality choices. They might, you might have people that get appointed by the people in mass populism movements, but it's just there's a reason that safeguards exist to prevent that in the political forum.
Now, so let's also wind it back though. So we're seeing the consequence then of Trump being the populist vote taking over there. I would have been a lot happier with some of the other candidates, probably from an outcome perspective, right? But having felt a little jilted from the Democrats, right? I was like, well, kind of shaking it up either way, voted for Trump, right? And yeah, like I said, I got caught up in that the first time. Um, But then looking where we're at now, if it was the populist choice versus the populist choice, right? Where do you think we'd be at right now with Bernie? I think we'd be in a way better spot than we were with Trump. But it's
I think the
the
Bernie presidency would have been a lot better than the Trump first term for sure.
yeah,
But I
yeah.
also think that he would have been an incredibly lame duck president. And I don't mean that in the bad way, because financially speaking, the US stock market does the best during lame duck presidencies where there's not a lot of like political turmoil that causes drama. It just kind of lets the economy do its thing. I think that it would have been a great presidency for the economy. I don't think I think he would have handled COVID responsibly. But I don't think he would have gotten a lot of his main running points that he was running on over the finish line.
And so let's talk about that, right? The boogeyman of the left is this idea of universal policies, right? So this leads us into a little bit about equity being something that scares Democrats and Republicans for different reasons, right? So the word equity can scare Republicans because it means that they're not getting something potentially. So when they hear the word equity, it means that my tax dollars are going to someone else and I'm not getting them. Because the idea of equity is you bring everyone up to the same standard, and if you're not already there at that standard, you're being brought up by whatever is provided, right? So let's say in special education, right? Those are equity dollars, so they put more money per student into special education because we're trying to bring everyone up to the same level,
Mm-hmm.
right? On the Democrat side of things, equity is the boogeyman because, or excuse me, equity is in a sense what we settle for because we don't want to push too far into the universals, right? Universal healthcare, universal education. When in reality, those universal policies like healthcare and education, parental leave, those are all things that, when they're universal, are potentially less divisive because everyone gets something from their tax dollar, right? So even though someone's making, let's say, $1 billion, they still have the same education benefit, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're paying into it so they get the benefit, right? But it's funny because what we're then left with from the left and from the Democrats, and um, we're left with policies that are valuable and worthwhile, and we need to invest into them, but they're policies where not everyone can get the benefit. It's only the people who truly do show a need for it.
I think a lot of the things that prevent Democrats from taking stand, like look at Zoram Mamdani right now. It's a perfect
Getting
example.
eaten
Who's
alive by propaganda on the other side.
Yeah, well, I mean, they sure are trying, but he's gonna win. Like I would be shocked if he lost.
We're gonna be
The,
looking
the,
at
the
those voting machines if they do, right?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, the other candidates right now, to my knowledge, that are have fervor behind them would be the current, incumbent Derek Adams, who has a ton of baggage when it comes to things he's been in the news for lately. Uh, Cuomo is running as an independent because he lost as a the Democratic national or the Democratic choice for the seat. Um, and then who's running for the Republicans? I don't even know.
It's that guy that has like the safe streets program, right?
Oh
Like the
yeah.
red beret guy.
Yes. Yes, so he's not going to win. I remember him now. I forgot his name. Let me look him
It's
up.
like the clean up the streets program of New York or the safe streets program in New York, and it's a wildly like definitely toes the line of some stop and frisk racism stuff, in my opinion. But yeah,
Here's
so
who's running for New York mayor. Well, the point I'm bringing up though about Zoran Mamdani is that he is putting together a platform that has a lot of people scared when it comes to um, Curtis Siwa. That's his name. That's the guy who runs that.
what's
He's the
his
guy who's
name?
the Curtis Siwa. He's the vigilante anti-crime guardian angels guy.
Yeah,
Um, he's putting together a bunch of programs that are meant to seen as socialism with an evil like cackle and thunder clouds in the background as I say it. It's he's looking for platforms that are going to help the city. So who's going to vote on those platforms that are going to help the city, but citizens of that city? And it's one of those things where people in the Democratic side, for me, at the national scale, are afraid to support universal healthcare programs, universal parent leave programs for maternity or sickness, things like that.
Daycare,
Um,
childcare, preschool.
childcare, or even if you go as far as Andrew Yang with the universal basic income, is that they don't feel like they're going to get the support from their own side, so they don't feel they have it's always seen as like a far off pipe dream to Democrats. Like even though everyone kind of wants it, they're always like the threat of, well, how are you going to pay for it? And then that's where they always get mired down in conversations with people that just are there to throw up counter viewpoints and be obstructionist to the idea.
And my
So you get a
argument
lot of
with
people who
that
aren't willing to follow through.
My argument with that is at this point, a lot of those programs are things that we can't not afford to invest in.
Oh,
I
I agree.
know I posted something on Facebook recently about New Mexico being the first state to offer the universal childcare. And the word universal means that everyone gets it. It's not based on income. It means everyone gets it. So it shouldn't be a divisive issue unless you're someone who doesn't have kids or you're someone who already has had kids who's salty that they didn't get the benefit, right? That's where the division comes from, is the either it's not applicable to you because you don't have kids, or it's your reason against it is I suffered, so you're going to too. Like I paid
Yeah.
for childcare, so you're going to have to too.
That prevents anything from ever getting better ever.
Anything from ever getting better, right? So one of those mindsets that growing up that's one of those mindsets that when I look at people older than me in my family, in my circle, who have that "I suffered, so you're gonna suffer" mentality, I'm like, I don't ho that's just not it's not a constructive stance to have. That's not how society moves on. You're gonna want things better for your children, are you not? I'm gonna want things better for my kids, because right now, under these circumstances, stagnant wages plus however many years till they're at childbearing age, that's gonna be impossible if things don't get better.
I think that if Bernie Sanders had tried to get a lot of his programs through, they would have been mired down in um endless endless debate in the Senate and the House. I think that nothing would get supported from, like, I think you would actually have, it probably would have been good for the United States, because I think you actually would have had a lot of more cross the aisle conversations about how bad things are.
Yeah.
Not in like a negative way, but in like a no one wants to work with Bernie Sanders, so the both sides of the camps are going to end up working together against Bernie Sanders, is what would have ended up happening. And now if
Right.
that's a good thing or a bad thing, who knows? It's all hypotheticals. I personally was pretty happy he lost. I remember very vividly um going to one of the polling places locally here in the area, where they had um people from the camps meet and do like stump speech kind of stuff, and like support for each side, ask questions for the candidates. And I remember like kind of thinking how loud the crowd was in this like auditorium we were meeting, how loud the crowd was with Bernie Sanders supporters. And I wasn't one, but I wasn't, negative, against them or anything. I was just didn't want them to win. And the only other two or three people that were sitting near me that were Hillary Clinton supporters was a retired professor of economics from like Stanford or something. I remember it was a really like, oh wow, I didn't know you taught there. That's cool,
Stacked resume
Um,
sitting right next to you.
yeah, and then like I'm sitting there thinking, and I'm just like, isn't it crazy that this guy's vote, or not even vote, but like this guy's opinion is just washed out by the 20 something, 30 something screaming 18-year-old kids over there. And like they don't, and like those 18-year-old kids, they don't have any idea like what socialism looks like in practice. And like I don't mean that in again a negative way, but like we have socialistic programs in the United States already. Absolutely, we do. But like I went down to Cuba. I lived in Cuba for a while for study abroad, and like I saw how socialism works in practice. I've traveled to countries in Europe, and a lot of those countries are doing very well, like Denmark, and places like that. They have socialistic programs. They're doing really well. They have a population base that's like a 50th of the United States, if that. Like they have smaller populations than some cities in the United
Doesn't that
States.
mean that they potentially have less tax revenue to get done what they wanna get done, though?
Yeah, but they also have less cost to cover with that tax revenue. It's just
And
it's
couldn't we make the argument that
the biggest
Cuba was
problem with
affected by the embargo, not
the
communism, socialism itself?
you could buy toilet seats from China, man. They we'll have a talk about the Cuba and the embargo and in my opinions on it. It's because I'll bring up some crazy points.
But you're
What
making
I'm
the
trying
you're
to say
making the
though,
argument that the Cuba socialism done in Cuba, right? You saw it wasn't that good. I'm trying to say, right, that the
well, because
influence of the United
you'd go
States
to it
was
like
so
so. I got to
relative.
interview the head minister of the medical head of medicine for the country. Cuba's incredibly famous for their doctors. They like the number one export from Cuba is their medical practitioners. They have
Crazy.
like just wizards for doctors.
Yep.
In the United States, it takes you
I have
all
heard that,
sorts
yep.
of equipment to diagnose someone. You can walk over to a Cuban guy with a stethoscope and he'll be like, "Yep, you got it." Yeah, they're just they're in crazy good doctors. So I actually got to interview the head of their medical staff of the country, the chief of medicine, and he said that his number one complaint that in their country is they have so many people looking for elective surgery that it delays surgery for like actual necessity.
Which is the classical argument of the right comparing the medical
But
system with
that's
Canada.
coming from
So,
the lead guy that I actually interviewed. I'll see if I can find the footage because I recorded the whole interview.
oh,
It
and
was
that's why
years
people
ago.
want to hold on to their healthcare plans here in the States because they hear the horror stories of people coming over from
It's
Canada to
just
get their
when you
elective
think about
surgeries.
the 360 350 million people or something like that that live in the United States, it makes it really interesting to think about like the number one problem with a socialistic government is corruption. And when you have that large of a program, it doesn't work in China. The like one party rule system is uh,
Can we not call corruption, though, the insurance companies that are making billions in profits and those going to stockholders and shareholders rather than back into the ideas with the universal health care, right? Is that you're not paying out the profits. So costs go down and everything's reinvested back into the system rather than these fat cats profiting from people's demise. Right.
yeah,
So
it's the negative effects of capitalism. You get eventually you get to the end of capitalism and all the money's on one side of the board,
yep.
and that's we're seeing that in practice today, not just in the healthcare side of the world, but in the economy, property, all sorts of things. The social wealth gap is growing every administration. And I don't think there's been any administration that has the ability to target it without some sort of major world catastrophe. Essentially, what fueled the capitalistic structure we have in the United States was the great boom after World War II. So that gigantic change and shift in not just our government and how it operates, but also how we kind of quasi colonize or help industrialize some of these other countries like say Japan or Korea, and we bring our form of government, our form of economics, and we just throw it at them and now they run with it in speed. So like they're
Korea, I think there's no better example than Korea, North Korea, South Korea, right?
exactly.
Yep.
So there's going to be problems from our system of government and our system of economics, the further we get away from any big change in that system, right? Because it's all going to start just getting conglomerated off to one side. Like, look at these giant mergers right now that are affecting the television industry and the FAA, where you have Paramount, Skydance, NextCorp, Sinclair.
CBS, yeah, Central,
These
CBS.
are all companies that um aren't just your NBCs or your ABCs or your CBS. Those are chicken feed compared to the companies I was listening. These are companies that own 200 plus channels through the FAA, and they can throw their weight around, and so it's
FCC.
FCC. So excuse me, not the FAA. Yeah,
You're
not
good.
they're not flying planes, but you get what I mean.
We're now not getting compensated though under the Trump administration. We're not getting compensated for the flight delays and flight bumps, involuntary flight bumps anymore. Do you see that with the FAA? They're changing those
No,
rules.
really?
So yeah,
See,
dude, if
that
you get
pisses me off
delayed or
because I
whatever,
fly all the time,
yeah,
and I
they're no longer required to reimburse you or to essentially get fined on your behalf. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
yep,
that pisses me off because I fly quite a bit for work. I
it
travel
grinds
quite a bit for
Randall's
work.
gears. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's what makes me upset. And they also there's a lot of was that the big beautiful bill? Was that where that was?
I don't know if I was in the big beautiful bill or a separate thing. I don't know if that was one of those
So
lines along with
crazy.
the suppressors and stuff, you know. Which
It,
2016 me would have been super stoked about the suppressors bill deal, but I don't think it would mean anything in Washington now with their rules and regulations. But
it's just
I was a
nuts
gun nut
how
back then, so
there's so many little things like that. Like how did you see they in the big beautiful bill they also changed the inheritance laws, so it's easier to pass money along to your inheritors, and like it's more safeguarded against tax now. Who does that help?
I don't necessarily disagree with that because that's going to be one
People with
of
large
the. I'm not
inheritances.
saying for my family, I'm not planning on or counting on any of this, but I know as far as the millennial generation, there's the upcoming and currently happening great. They're calling it the great wealth transfer that's going to happen, and yeah, I can see why they're doing this is because I think you and I were talking about the propaganda, right? People back in the day, I think, were a little bit less questioning of the system as a whole because and of the propaganda because they were benefiting a lot more from it, right? Like my phrase of the prior generations having the luxury to be average, right? And kind of how our parents lose sight of the fact, especially like you and me and our friends and educated friends, they kind of lose sight of what we're talking about because we are college educated and we are successful and we're not your typical average wage working person. We're doing okay, right? We have houses, we're good. We're talking about our generation as a whole, right? The
Yeah,
propaganda isn't working on them because they're not benefiting from it, right? So yeah, I can totally see why they would try and put in the big beautiful bill there um things to make the great wealth transfer easier because that's one of the few things I could see actually the propaganda like people going along with propaganda. It's like, oh, well, there's something in it for me, so I'll go along with it, right? But the more people that you alienate from the system, the less effective the propaganda becomes, the less effective that the American dream is, right?
yeah. I just think that if you're supportive of Bernie Sanders and taxing the rich, the last thing
Well,
we want
what?
to do is make it easier for them to transfer their wealth. You know what I mean?
True. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
tax it,
But I mean,
just
yeah.
tax it and
I've
fund something with it. What if they
did they
funded
make
schools with it?
I know, right? Well, so here's my question.
Are you
I
against
don't know the
schools
deep
now, John?
I'm just saying that I can see why they did it, right? I can see because
Yeah.
potentially
It's meant
if they didn't,
to like I get where you're coming from where if it's like a farmer, if it's like some guy trying to pass his business on to his kid like that or something, but like I got to
you're
look at
talking
I'll pull up I'll
you're
pull up
talking super
the
wealthy.
law and we
Yeah,
can look at what it said, but it was more meant to help like just monetary wealth, like
gotcha.
just people with money.
Yeah. Not
The other one I
your
thought was really crazy that was on there was they added a 10% tax on gambling. Did you see
oh,
that?
okay. On ultra gambling wins or whatever
On nope, on any gambling you do, you now pay 10% to the state immediately
to
in the United
Washington,
States. No,
United
no, no,
States.
no. By the state, I mean the federal government. You now
Okay.
pay. Yeah, so like if you're playing a dollar spin slot machine at a casino, every time you hit that button, you just gave the federal government 10 cents, just immediately, win or lose, win
So
or
then
lose.
let's say on like a minimum blackjack table or whatever, in your minimum bets or there's going to be taxes within that.
No, what happens is when you claim your taxes on your gambling at the end of the
Yeah.
year, or when you win a when you win a hand pay, which is over $1,200, you get taxed differently to account for that.
Interesting. Yeah, that
So
never
it's
had
so
been.
so it's
You've always
essentially
brought
so
up
it's
the
essentially a
property.
hidden tax that you don't really get to see, because not a lot of people claim their gambling on their gambling losses on their taxes, but you can
Right.
claim your gambling losses on your taxes. You're now only able to claim up to 90% of your losses on your taxes, not
Interesting.
100%. So
Interesting. So,
again, interesting. Because
yeah.
in a country where gambling is getting like pushed and like fed through social media to younger generation of people, this is going to account like for hundreds of millions of dollars of tax income for the federal government.
Right. And then, yeah, not to bring us back to tariffs too much, but I saw a clip of during Kirk's funeral yesterday, Donald Trump saying something about tariffs, where all the billions of dollars that we're getting, and if you're against tariffs, then you're un-American, or da da da. I'm like, dude,
Hmm.
get fucked, bro. It's us paying the damn tariffs. We're paying them. Where are you getting those billions of dollars from? They're getting them from us. They're not getting them from the companies. No company is taking on the cost of tariffs. You're absolutely insane if you think that companies are going to share the cost. They don't do things out of the goodness of their heart. They'll only do things if they're legislated and mandated to do so. Ugh, frustrating.
The I think I kind of made a slight joke about President McKinley on our last podcast we were talking recently. Um,
President Tariff.
yeah, President Tariff. He was the first president to like heavily use tariffs. But like the people don't really realize, if you're comparing like the things he was doing to what he was doing now, or like we're doing now, he was tariffing like a developing nation. Like the United States in like the late 1800s was a developing nation. So like the tariffs then kind of worked because there was so much different trade that was being imported, and stuff wasn't being manufactured, and like we were getting taken advantage of on the national scale. But even
And the
then,
British pound
what
was the
happened to
exchange
President?
currency as well. Not the
Yeah,
US dollar, but the pound.
can you remind me real quick too? What happened to President McKinley? He was assassinated in office, I think. Like people don't like tariffs. People don't
Yeah.
like people who do tariffs, and that brought FDR, or not FDR, excuse me, Teddy Roosevelt, Theodore Roosevelt to power, because he was his vice president,
Damn socialist.
and antitrust breaker. He was famous for going around breaking up monopolies. So like you have a guy who helps small business, and the only reason we got him was because of some crazy guy in 1801 1901 shot President McKinley.
Yeah. All right. So, also talking about how we got here, right, on today's episode. So, we recap the 2016 election, how we're here, essentially with not Bernie, and the Clinton Trump election, how that all went down. We know how that went down, obviously. Then coming into the end of Trump's first term, where we have this worldwide pandemic that happens, right? We're told to mask up. Companies are told to potentially censor themselves. And uh, for the greater good, in our opinion, for the greater good, and we'll talk about that and tease that out. Um, but right now, especially with what we're seeing with Jimmy Kimmel being essentially canceled, right? For small remarks that he said, you can make the argument that President Trump made a worse joke on TV.
Charlie said, that there was no such thing as hate speech. He obviously, no one anticipated what happened to Charlie, but you have always been in favor of free speech. Yeah, so do you have concern?
So
Yeah, I don't even think it had anything to do with the remarks. I think it's a cover story. I think it's a sham when people say that. No, not offense to you, but I think he was let go because of continuous remarks he had said about Donald Trump over the course of his past 8 years, 10
yeah,
years.
bullshit.
That's why he was let go.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Vindictive.
I'm not calling that BS. I'm calling the BS that they're going to lay it all at Kimmel's feet with the one
Yeah.
comment. But then the right now, right? Because I have a very right-leaning social network, as Randall can attest to. At least the people who are willing to comment on there are very right-leaning and want to keep bringing everything back to COVID. everything seems like, my new phrase that I like to say is, it seems less like morals and more like revenge with the right. Less like morals and more like revenge. How when people went out protesting, they were wishing for people who went out protesting to have been protesting during COVID, saying that there were bigger civil rights losses during COVID, that we should have been out marching for those civil rights losses during COVID, that, oh, this is, well, you guys wanted or your Democrat leaders were not for free speech when they went and were trying to deal with the public health crisis, and you guys weren't, or you were all for masks when we were dealing with the public health crisis, but now you're calling for ICE to unmask themselves, right? So and it is, and I'm going to tell you straight up, if you're listening, I'm going to tell you straight up, as someone who is from the camp of the right, like people in my network and circle, right, resembling very loud voices and echoing very loud voices like Marjorie Taylor Greene's before we were agreeing with her with the Epstein files, right? And I can tell you, having come from that camp and hearing these arguments going back to COVID, is it's it's a little exhausting, the mental gymnastics I have to go through to try and wrap my head around them justifying all of this. Randall, what do you think? What do you think about all this?
I think that there were very little, if not, I struggle to think of any civil liberties that were lost during COVID. Like, full stop. Someone asking you to put on a mask isn't equitable to a slavery, or asking you to wear a Jewish, yellow star on your arm, like Marjorie Taylor Greene is famous for it, saying a number of times. Several U.S. representatives had made that same comparison. It's there's things that supersede everything, uh like public health, that like you can't play with that. And John, you and I were talking about this briefly, just kind of in passing, and like on a Navy ship, which is essentially a small civilization in itself, when it's out at ocean, when they're running, and not even just the Navy. You can look at fucking Star Trek. It's the exact same thing. When you have one powerful leader, one captain who makes all the decisions, something's happening. There's only one person on the ship who can countermand that captain and even supersede them and tell them, no, sit down, I'm in charge now. And that's the doctor. The
The
public health,
actual
the risk of public
MD
health.
doctor, the doctor.
Yeah. The risk of public health is something you can't mess with. And so it's like when they came out with the seatbelt, and people were against wearing seatbelts because government can't tell me what to do with my health. Like, dude, you're still, like, what are we talking about? You know what I mean? It's such a small sacrifice of civil liberties, and I don't even say sacrifice. I would say like inconvenience. Such a small inconvenience of civil
But
liberties.
so many people feel so justified in getting on this cancel
For what? What
culture.
happened to them? Like, what happened to them?
Potentially, I'm going to make assumptions here that maybe some people who are being vocal did not want to get vaccinated and thought that was against their civil rights. And
Who developed that vaccine?
we'll get back to that. I want to real quick talk to what's kind of weird. You talk to the older generations who saw some of these horrible diseases, right? Like, I remember one of the stories my grandpa talks about, having been in Vietnam, is they would get, I don't know if routinely vaccinated is the right word, but they oftentimes got vaccinated and you didn't get paid because they did physical paychecks. So he said that you went through the vaccine line, you got your shot, and then you got your paycheck. Like, if you didn't get your vaccine, you didn't get your paycheck, right? And then also talking to someone from my prior line of work who did a lot of networking, and the fraternal organizations, was a part of the Rotary Club. And one of their big things that Rotary did was they were partly responsible for the worldwide eradication of polio, right? And how
I didn't know
I
that.
feel,
That's really cool. I had
yeah,
no idea about that. That's super cool.
Yep. So if you're kind of choosing fraternal organizations to join, Rotary was responsible partly for the worldwide eradication of polio. So they would go
Yeah, but Freemasons control
and
the world, John.
yeah. Yeah. So, and it's startling to see too now. I feel like the further we get from COVID, the more people are trying to justify that it was just a bad flu and that we didn't need to do what we did. Kind of like as
So
far
it
as
seems like
we go
a
back
lot of their
from
stresses
polio.
well, like a lot of their stresses from COVID seems to come from the vaccination, not the vaccine, not even from like mask mandates or like that. That seems like a bit of a straw man argument. But the not you, but like for conservatives, the only one I'll entertain is the COVID vaccine. You know, oh, I don't want to take that, and I got fired from my place of business. And it's like when you have a mass pandemic of something that's happening on the fly, needs to be developed. These are things that are being researched. This is why we had
CDC.
a mass pandemic. Uh,
I don't have a CDC
uh,
anymore. Kind of seems like. Sorry, go
well,
ahead.
it's why we had a mass pandemic like prevention department of the U.S. government and the CDC that ran through the Obama administration and conveniently ended the first year of Donald Trump's first administration. That we're no longer planning for, hey, what do we do if this happens? So like then that happens during his presidency, and we scramble to try to put things together. They do have I don't want to speak to, I don't have a scientific knowledge, but I know that they were developing vaccines for all COVID related, flus, for like the mother term of the flu. Um, so like it wasn't like they just invented this from nothing. The vaccine that they ended up giving out for the COVID-19 vaccine, because there were several vaccines, and that came from several different companies who had several different laying around partially done vaccinations for this already. Um, but it's crazy when all that happened under Operation Warp Speed, all that happened under the Donald
Under
Trump
Trump.
administration. So like where they were praising it. They were
Mm-hmm.
praising it. Just I could find tweets of all of these
Praising the
Republicans
hoax.
praising it.
They're praising their and then you want to go back and say, "Oh, we didn't need to do that. COVID-19 was a hoax." It's like, well, the first administration didn't think so. The first Trump administration thought it was something that needed to be handled very swiftly, right? And I hope
If well, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say I hope that we can get. I'm hoping that we can get some people on the podcast who have had frontline experience dealing with the COVID pandemic to set
It's
the
just gonna,
record
at the end of the day,
straight.
it's gonna come down to them saying, I wasn't willing to get the shot because I'm not putting that shit in my body. And then it's like, well, okay, it was research. Do you have any research to say it isn't? Well, I don't trust the research. Okay. Can you hold a scientific conversation about the research? No. Uh okay.
Yeah.
It's a lot of these people, like they fall back on, like there's this commercial that's going around, and it's about it's on TV. I've seen it. It's this woman who like the product is about like how to check both sides. It's like for Ground News. If we ever get a sponsorship, Ground News.
Yeah, ground news or straight arrow news is a good one too. Does the
But
left right
what it was about was
bias
showing both sides of an article as it comes out, and so people can see both sides, how it's being presented. And so this woman's looking up and she goes like, types in vaccines, and the first guy that pops up over here is this doctor that's like, well, when two lipids meet and they combine it, and he starts talking science. And then she just looks at him and then she Googles it again, and then this like crazy mom pops up and she's like, vaccines are just a scam to make money. And it's like, woman, that first guy, just because you didn't understand what he was saying doesn't mean he's wrong. It just means you're undereducated on the topic.
Yeah. And I think that some of it also goes back to right misinformation that potentially was spread about the release of COVID and how people just because you don't think it could be true doesn't mean that it's not true. Just because you think that it can't happen doesn't mean that it won't happen, right? And I think that it also goes back to the fact that people, I think a lot of people think that COVID was a manufactured deal, right? That potentially got out of a lab. And my argument to that is that if you do think that this was an attack or if it was an inadvertent release from the facility where they work on vaccines, wouldn't that mean that it actually is a threat more than not a threat? So
Yeah.
I don't even follow their logic with that either.
Even if it
I'm
was
also,
man-made in a lab, wouldn't it have affected the country that it affected that manufactured it?
it did affect that country. It did affect China.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like
Right.
that doesn't seem like the first step I would take if I'm making a drug against my enemies is to make sure I don't accidentally give it to myself. That's what I'm trying to say.
I think that people, though, so my argument, they're trying to think how these people think and how I myself think conspiratorially, right? Does the nation of China really, do they care all that much about their people? Like a few deaths are okay, a few casualties are okay.
Yeah. Well, you can't control the flu though. You know what I mean? It's not like it's like a sexually transmitted disease where it's like, well, we know we won't get it because of this. Like you're in an elevator that someone sneezed in 15 minutes before you, and you have it. You know?
Yeah, I'm not arguing for any of these things. I'm arguing
No,
just
devil's advocates are healthy. You're good.
I'm trying. Well, I would like to have some of these people on, and I would like for them to be able to articulate where they're coming from, because everything goes back to COVID with some of these folks.
I'm just gonna have a field day. I'll ask so
No,
many
we're going to be
questions.
nice, Randall. We're
Oh, I
going
will.
to
No, I'll just ask so many questions that are
be
just
nice.
so uncomfortable to answer that it's like, ooh.
Well, and that's kind of what I did too, with
It's like
obviously
those
Kirk
flat
was,
earthers. Those flat earthers where you're like, oh, they're just trying to keep the secret from us. And it's like, the secret of what? And it's like, oh, the secret of, this the frozen wall out of the end of the ocean. And it's like, well, is Iran in on this secret too? They're keeping that from you. Like North Korea, they hate us, but they're like, hey, we agree to not tell your populace about the secret wall. You know what I mean? It's crazy stuff.
okay. So then masking, right? So we kind of talked about the vaccine. We talked about masking. We talked about how a lot of these folks are
What do you think about Gavin Newsom's new law in California? That
absolutely love it. Absolutely.
Yeah,
You cannot have a masked police force who cannot be identified. Sorry. You cannot have, okay, so we need to first go back to civilians and the state, right?
yeah,
So when genocides happen, when really bad things when governments can do really bad things, it happens through the state, and it happens with a strong arm and deception too, right? So when you have agents of the state who you can't identify as such that are going and picking up people, throwing them in a van, and you can't even identify them, right? That's why we need the bill such as has been, did Newsom sign it, or is
well,
it
like
just
this,
introduced?
what's the argument? Devil's advocate me an argument for why you should have a mask on a federal person, on like
That,
an
well,
ICE
what they're
agent.
going to say is that they can get doxxed.
When you when you
Randall,
because so do people dox firefighters? And the reason for that is because they're there to help people, right? They're there to get your cat out of the tree or take your firehouse down, right? The side on the slogan on the cop cars says protect and serve. What does it say on the ICE one? Enforce, scare, harass, intimidate. Like when you look at what these people are doing, the whole reason you have to wear a badge and that says your number on it and a name tag underneath the badge is so you can be identified. When you're doing your job, you shouldn't. All right, I'm just getting on a rant, but you shouldn't look to be hired onto a job where you then go, okay, I need to hide my identity, right? I don't want people knowing I do this. Like, well, it's the cartoon villainy. It's so villainous that it's a cartoon. You imagine the guy afterwards, he goes and like rolls his mustache.
yeah.
Like it's just silly. So like when I go on the comment sections of Facebook and I see that new law that has police identify themselves, first off, I'm blown away that even had to be a law, because there's already laws about police identification in the first place. It's obnoxious to think that they can do this in the first place. Second off, every single comment from screaming Karens is, oh, here we are making it harder to identify or easier to identify the police, but how do you identify criminals? I don't see any laws on the books about criminals wearing masks. And it's like, John, I texted it to you today. Penal code, what was it? 211 or something like that in the state of California. You can't wear masks. 185 Penal Code 185 section of California makes it a misdemeanor to wear a mask or a disguise with the intent to invade law enforcement while committing or fleeing from a crime. So it
So
already is a
essentially,
crime.
it's an enhancement. It's an enhancement on a crime, just like if you do crime with a gun, crime with a mask. It's an
If
enhancement
you
on.
rob a bank with a mask
Right.
on, it's different if you rob a bank with your face showing.
Right.
Exactly. But the point is it is a crime. And the only reason that crime even exists is because of the KKK, is because of a white supremacist nationalist group.
What?
Isn't that
You
crazy that these people that were afraid to show themselves and hid their identities because they're afraid of what people would do to them if they knew who they were, wearing masks, gathering in public places, rounding people up.
It's not
Crazy.
funny, but it's the correlation.
The irony is deafening. It's crazy. So it's like the only reason these laws exist that criminalized wearing masks was because of the KKK. So now you have laws across the states. There's a handful of them. I think there's like 15 of them that have laws like that on the books. Good. That should be a law. You shouldn't hide your identity. But if you're paid by the state, paid by the federal government, paid by
the
the
state.
taxpayer
Yeah, the
dollar.
state meaning the federal government, the state, the man. If you're paid
Yeah.
by the man,
If you're paid by the tax dollar, you should have to identify yourself when operating in a public place, in a public forum, in public as a member of the public.
Yeah.
So
And
I think it's
one thing.
obnoxious. If you don't want to get doxxed, don't be a member of the public. What are the anti-doxing laws for like council people, or like how about those people at school councils that have been getting like verbally harassed on their way out to the cars by angry parents that don't want them teaching whatever.
It's wild. So
You know what I mean?
one of the things that kind of pops into my head, with all this, right? Like going back to the masking of COVID, though, right? Is kind of where I wish that we would get to, and I'm hopeful that we get to with something like Trump, where voices against Trump and voices against ICE are loud enough, and that, protests are enough, and like lawful civil disobedience is enough.
Good trouble.
Good trouble is enough that Trump's not a problem. And I've said this before, is that I would much rather have someone later on come to me and say, well, you were wrong about all that. That's not really how it went down. And I'll, in the back of my head, be like, yeah, stupid. It's like that because we made noise. It's like that because we used our voices and we stood up. We took action rather than what we think is going to happen is we think we're leading down a really bad road, and we think this, and it's why we're talking now. We hope that we're wrong, and we hope that we don't get to that point. But I don't want to have to live in a world where I'm right. I would much rather have some dumb person come up to me and say you were wrong, when I'm not wrong because I was wrong. I'm wrong because we sounded the alarm bell, dummy.
Speaking
So.
of wild medical theory, vaccine connections with just shady medicine. What do you think about the new link that has been drawn by our head of our medicine of the United States, RFK?
Didn't they say that? Hold on. Don't say it. They
You
think
could
that
do it. You could do it.
autism
You
is
do it.
somehow related to some chemical folate, right? Aren't they saying it's folate? What are they
No, it's
saying?
the Trump administration links Tylenol
Tylenol. That's it.
to autism. Says an unproven link between autism and pregnant women and the use of acetaminophen, the active ingredient in the world's most common over-the-counter pain relief, Tylenol.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I haven't looked at any research, right? Like I get
That's the point.
my facts from research.
That's the point. Is you and I don't know, right? So what's our next instinct?
We're gonna
Well,
look it up.
let's look at the research.
Let's
Let's
go
look
to
at the
fucking Google
and,
Scholar and look it up.
it says in the very beginning of the article, unproven link. It's not going to take a lot of research.
Because people just want that, and that's what's hard
The
being
bulk of
over
scientific
here.
literature suggests no causal link between autism and exposure to acetaminophen in the womb. Tylenol is considered the safest treatment for pain relief during pregnancy.
That's what's so frustrating about being over here and someone who does genuinely. That's what's frustrating about someone who has changed a pretty big shift in their worldview compared to where I was. I get really frustrated as I know how far I've come, but I also know how how programmed in the propaganda and the indoctrination is. It took a lot for me to essentially get deprogrammed with a lot of this stuff. So it's frustrating when you try, like I kind of try and bring people through how I thought about it to get to where I'm at. But like
Deprogramming a little bit.
it's disheartening to know that like it took a lot for me to go through that, and I don't know if a lot of people have the potential to do that. I hope they do, and I hope that they can listen to what we're saying, but it's tough, right? Like our first instinct is to go look it up, but it's not like do your own research. It's not, you know what I mean? Because that
Well,
phrase
yeah,
is
do your own
red
research is the
pilled right
problem that
now.
led to 90% of the things that we're in right now anyway. But
No.
what I think is interesting is something so simple as Tylenol, acetaminophen use, not just Tylenol, acetaminophen use, any over the counter, um, could be responsible for autism. Okay, so what happens when you have a holistic mother who took no acetaminophen and then has an autistic kid?
Yeah.
How's that happen?
So, and then it's kind of,
That definitely is a thing.
we're going to not jump too much, but I wanted to talk to before this podcast. We're kind of coming to a close here in a little bit, but people then have been quoting Jimmy Kimmel recently back from COVID when he made the joke about unvaccinated people not getting beds in the hospital. And they're trying to make the argument that because he said that, right, they're saying, well, are we for free speech now? He said that back then. It's kind of hard for me. It's kind of hard for me to say something that's really different than what Jimmy Kimmel said, right? If you think that COVID-19 is a hoax and you think that it's just the flu and you didn't get the vaccine, I don't know. I don't really know what to say to that. It was made in joke format, but I don't disagree with at the
Well,
time.
you have to remember he's an entertainer and he's meant to be making controversial statements in forms of satire. So like if he's saying something like that, like first off, I made that exact same comparison and I'm not a TV host. If you get COVID and you're it's so bad you should be hospitalized. I remember at the time during that time of the outbreak of the pandemic, they had to choose. You had doctors who were going home, you know, sick with the mental choice they had to make of who do I give the respirator to between this guy or that guy. And
And
it's
if
like,
it
well,
was someone who was vehemently anti-vax and thought it was a hoax,
if you're standing there and you're telling the doctor, by the way, that guy is like did everything he could to not get this, went through all precautions, wore the mask, got the vaccination, did everything he could, and he's dying now. And that guy has been talking, mad crap online about this whole thing being a hoax, not real, doesn't need it, doesn't get to get the vaccination, is currently taking a horse deworming medicine that he's rubbing into his gums like a horse. He also needs a respirator. Who do you choose?
and so that's where people will then criticize us and they'll say, oh, or then it kind of goes to what they'll try and defend Brian Kilmeade on the same token. It's like, well, your guy said that unvaccinated COVID people shouldn't get COVID beds. Well, our guy said that the cure to the
Homeless should be
homelessness
rounded up
problem
and
is to
euthanized.
euthanize them.
And he doesn't. And then he just gives a half-assed apology where he doesn't even look at the camera. He's like, "Oh, I'm going to give an apology for that. I would like to apologize." It's a sham. And then Brian Kilmeade is supposed to be starting his own late night show, like the late night shows that are being canceled, which will be put on Fox, which
It's
then will
not going to
be.
be. It's not going to be funny. They're not.
Well,
Those people aren't funny.
it's not. It's not even about funny. It's about
It's
state
not
propaganda.
funny.
This
Yeah.
is how you. This is like the first thing you do. Viktor Orban in Hungary, Vladimir Putin in Russia. The first thing they did when they came to power was completely destroy TV stations that were not supplemental to them.
Yeah.
There's an MTV station in Russia, HVB, I think is what it was called, and it had a show that was like crank callers, like in the United States with the puppets that would make phone calls, except it was political figures trying to explain like their bad political gaffes. Did you see this?
Huh? No.
Well, the first thing they do though is in the what 2001 2003 era of Vladimir Putin's first term as president of Russia, his first thing he does is he literally marched in his Secret Service men to the MTV like studio and just literally told their people, you can't come to work today unless you sign a pledge of loyalty to the president. Otherwise, this station is now being taken over, and no one fought it. No one, everyone's like, "That's fucking crazy. We'll just go work for this other independent news media, and we're not going to fuck with you." And now we have Vladimir Putin, who destroys all of Russia and takes down anyone who says anything against him. It's the very first act that these people make is to take away the voices that show the comedy of their actions, of how like I said, the comical cartoon villain of their actions. It shows it to the world, and then they'll replace them with the fucking yes man like a Brian Kilmeade who will get up there and just say, "Oh, isn't everything grand? Who could ever hate life in America?"
Yeah.
It's
And
Orwellian.
that goes segueing into then now. People also want to make the argument about Mark Zuckerberg during COVID being pressured to take down misleading information in an attempt to improve public health, in an attempt to have people not be fed misinformation. People on the right are now saying, "Oh, you liberals are for free speech now, but you weren't for free speech back when Zuckerberg went on Joe Rogan and said that he was getting censored," right? And the term is jawboning, right? So I believe what happened when he took the stand in Congress, though, Randall. What happened when Zuckerberg took the stand to defend, or what happened?
That he said that the Biden administration had played no part in the decision of Facebook to censor medical information being given out as gospel on their platform
So that's what he
during
said.
an active pandemic, which is something that needs to be remembered when taking all this into consideration, because again, medical public health supersedes everything else. If this is happening all during an active, if you're it's like a fire. There's a building on fire, right? During the fire takes precedent. You know what I mean? During an active pandemic, the misinformation gets censored. Why? Because it's going to spread the fire otherwise. So
And
that's what he said, though. Is to
people
his
forget.
extent that he was never directly told by the Biden administration. I'm pretty sure he said something to that extent, and then he goes on Joe Rogan later and says, that they were telling him he can either play ball or cooperate, and censored him.
So there's things we need to remember here. There's things we need to remember. Who are we going to believe? Are we going to believe Mark Zuckerberg on the stand under oath?
Under oath, yeah.
Under oath, or are we going to believe Mark Zuckerberg on Joe Rogan's podcast, which Joe Rogan, I believe now, feels so awful about what he created. Joe Rogan now, I believe, has a hard time sleeping at night, knowing what's
I don't know
happening
about
right
that.
now with Trump.
I
I
I
think
I
that
think a $460 million Spotify contract makes you sleep pretty fucking cushy.
makes you sleep pretty good, but I believe that everyone does have a conscience deep down, and I think that he does feel a little bit bad about the monster he created with essentially endorsing Trump. That's right. So, do we believe Zuckerberg on the stand under oath, or do we believe Zuckerberg on a propaganda podcast at this point? Really?
Do we believe the man under threat of perjury, or do you want
Right.
to believe the two cool dudes just riffing it? Just kind of, yeah, the president told me I had to do that, so I listened to him. I was being strong armed, classic jawboning.
Do you? So, you at home listening, do you honestly believe that? And you have to remember that Zuckerberg saying that's skin in the game to get you riled up against the other side, because he said it before he said it before the 2024 election. That's fuel to make you upset that the Democrats could do such a thing, right? To take away my right to free speech. That's getting
I
you riled up.
I can't remember hearing Joe Biden. I must have missed the political speech or the questions at the gaggle of reporters where Joe Biden chagrined the 91% of the coverage that's on him is negative, and said that it's illegal to talk negatively about the president. I don't remember that, but I do remember when Donald Trump said that this week. So that's kind of thin skin, excuse me, on his part. And it's crazy too. We're like, even if Mark Zuckerberg was told by the trumpet or the Biden administration to, tone down the false narratives on social media, da 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 da, and they infringed on his speech and told him what to do. If that did happen, which I'm not saying it did, if it did happen, it happened completely behind closed doors so that it wouldn't cause a public outcry and it would be affected in actual use, right? So then you look at that in comparison to what people are drawing this in comparison to, with the FCC chairman telling Benny Johnson, I'm pretty sure was the podcast he was on, where he said the night before Jimmy Kimmel was fired, that I'm speaking to ABC and Jimmy Kimmel, and they are needed to play the easy way or the hard way, if they want to have FCC crack down on them. And then within hours, Jimmy Kimmel's fired. So that happened in the public square. And then when asked, did they do that to Brendan Carr, the FCC chairman? They asked him, did it was oh, I'm blanking on the CNN reporter, Brian Selter's reporting, who asked him, did you do this, strong arm them with your position? And he just responded with a meme from The Office of Dwight Schrute going like this. Didn't even answer the question. Just like, what the fuck are we talking about? That's done in public for people to see. The federal government just strong-armed a business into firing an individual employee, and as leverage used a second $6 billion mega merger that was also technically shouldn't happen. That merger between Skynet and or NextCorp and, oh man, what's the name of it? This Tarjarn or Tarjo, something like that.
I don't know. Yeah.
It's the company that these two companies, if they merged, they would own 80% of the broadcasting rights in the United States. There's a federal legislation that makes it so you can't own more than 39%. So this would be double. They would own every television. You would turn their TV on. Your TV belongs to them, essentially, if that happens.
And it's crazy too, because back in 2019, Brendan Carr was still, I believe, the FCC chair, or was going to be the FCC chair
No,
under
it
Trump's
was
term.
that's that guy with the big Reese's cup. The Sanji something. I'll see.
Oh, like back when the net neutrality stuff was going on, that guy and all
Yeah,
those
that
hearings.
was a different guy.
Okay. But there is Brendan Carr, though, on the record in 2019 was
Ajit
against.
Paj was 27 to 2021. Or Ajit Pai, excuse me. He was
Do I need
really
to look up?
famous because he got made fun of by Stephen Colbert. No, not Stephen Colbert, John Oliver, because there's a picture of Aji Pai. Here, I don't think I could find it. There's a picture of him with a gigantic Reese's cup, and like he's just sipping out of it like it's a normal coffee mug, but this thing is way bigger than it should be, and it was one of those things that went viral for absolutely no reason.
So, and it's a little frustrating right now too that people are running cover for, yeah, that guy.
Thing's as big as his head.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's funny. So yeah, I think the free speech thing right now with the right calling out the left on the hypocrisy, right? Everything goes back to COVID, right? We're talking about the masks and masking of federal agents, they go back to COVID. We talk about free speech and Jimmy Kimmel being canceled and this and that, and it kind of goes Brian Kilmeade to Jimmy Kimmel back to also then Zuckerberg and COVID, right? A lot of when I say we, and I don't really want to pick a side because I hope that through this podcast you can kind of see that even Randall and I have different views on stuff, right? We have different views. We voted for different people, right? So I say we, and I say kind of like say we the people, right? It's like it's it's hard when we who kind of are seeing what's going on, it's hard when things always go default back to, I think you said it best, Randall, the what about isms, right? The what about this? What about when this happened? And you need to, it's a higher level thinking skill to be able to know what mutual exclusivity is, right? To be able to know that I can disagree with Bob Ferguson's tax increases here in Washington state, and I can be pissed off that we're losing the contract for the ferries down to the Florida company. I can be pissed off about all that and live in a blue state and have a blue state governor, and I can be pissed about that. But I can also be pissed, and I can, you know, I can warn about what we're seeing, and we can warn about, say, the rise of fascism that is happening under the Republicans.
Nothing we see is ever going to be perfect, is what you're trying to say. Like you vote for the best option for what you get, and when you get presented with two options, neither of them are good, which is what the overarching theme for the last three elections in the United States has been, which I think is always just hysterical in comparisons. But between Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, Barack Obama, or excuse me, Donald Trump and Joe Biden, and then Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, it's always like what's gonna be the best for me. A lot of people are single issue voters. A lot of people are solo minded voters, where they look at themselves first rather than what's going to help the country or what they think the country needs right now. You're never going to be ultimately happy with every single thing with any candidate. I can't think of any candidate I voted for where I'm like, you know what? There's not a single thing that they did or I could defend. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But it goes back to the mutual exclusivity point, though, right? Like you can believe two things to be true, even though they don't have to both exist, right? Like you can be against what you see in Washington state with taxes, and then you can also be against what you see at the federal level, or you can be in agreement with what you see in federal level, and you can be in agreement with what you see at the state level, right? Like those ideas, they're not mutually exclusive. They both don't have to exist for them to be true. You can believe one of them without believing the other, right? I can believe that Bob Ferguson might single-handedly be the reason why this state flips red, right? I can believe that, but then I can believe that by what he's doing, but I can also be against what I see on the Republican side. I can be for what I see on the Democrat side too. So you can think more complicated than just like when Randall was saying we need more regulated voters in episode 1. We need a more informed populace, right? To be able to make these decisions that do affect us, right? And one of the biggest shames of the 2024 election was how many registered voters that didn't even show up, right? That's the biggest shame out of this whole thing, too. Because had all of them showed up, maybe we wouldn't be in the situation we're in now.
Do you think Bob Ferguson's going to turn the state red? I'd be amazed.
So I follow a lot of the conservative. We're kind of running out of time, but I follow a lot of the conservative people on, like, the local conservative people, KVI, 770, Jason Rantz, Brandy Cruz. I follow all of them just to kind of see what that echo chamber's doing right now, and they're getting a lot of people on. Washington is in serious trouble right now, I believe.
That blows me away, because the last time there was a Republican governor of Washington was 1965 and 1977, and currently Washington ranks within the top 10 of every public measurable public state poll. It blows me away.
So I don't know if it will happen or not, but I think that if it were to happen, it would be soon.
It's just the exact opposite reversal from those arguments where you see Arkansas, right? Who has Sarah Huckabee Sanders as the current governor of Arkansas. Nepotism. But the measurement for Arkansas, they're I think that the highest measurement is 35th in one of theirs, and it's public health. But of all the measurements of state comparisons, Arkansas is low 40s. And so everyone's how, and then you look at their government there in Arkansas and the state government, and you're oh, well, they haven't had a Democratic governor of Arkansas in they had one in 2007. So I guess I'm wrong, but that was a bad choice for a state. So we'll just cut this part out. But my argument is,
I know what you're saying, though. It's the exact opposite, right? Washingtonians have
or any of these other states. Choose one of these other states that's been Republican dominated for at least since the 60s or 70s, and then look where they're at in every ranking, and they're terrible. And then you ask, well, why is Washington so successful?
Well, and it's kind of funny because, right, everything goes through the Hegelian dialect, right? You familiar with that, the Hegelian dialect?
I'm not.
So the Hegelian dialect is essentially, as history marches on, you have your original thesis, right? Excuse me, you have your thesis over here, okay? And then as history marches on, you then create an antithesis to your thesis,
okay,
right? And then you settle in the middle of your synthesis, right? And then your synthesis then becomes a thesis. You develop an antithesis and you center on a synthesis. And it marches on, right? Like a pendulum, and it marches on.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to remember, too, that that's happening in multiple levels at once, everything everywhere all at once. So it's happening on the world scale. It's happening on the national scale, the state scale, the local scale, right? So like we're saying, it's flipped from, it was blue under Barack, and now we got Trump, and we had a little break with Biden, but it still came back, right? And then, right, like you're saying, with Washington being super blue, or these other red states who are kind of fed up, right? Like you could say that people in Washington are fed up that they're losing contracts, right? That Boeing moved its headquarters back in the day under, Democratic leadership. Maybe the right could have came in and stopped that, right? So it's interesting, though, because it's with what ifs, right? Like those are kind of being placed with what ifs rather than the actual what you're talking about of actual facts, as far as we are in the bottom of the barrel with healthcare, education, and this, and we've had Republican leaders rule us. Right.
Well, it's just wild to me, too, that Republicans who are famous for getting government out of business and being government should be small, government should have less control over XYZ. And then it's well, the Republicans would have saved Boeing from leaving our state. It's like, wait. Aren't they not supposed to be involved in like the business? And don't you want like the government to not be, controlling the state's economic policies? Like, what the fuck? None completely antithesis to what your like whole guiding viewpoint of small government is.
And then I
think it's crazy.
To Bob Ferguson with the ferry contract. Do you know the story on that? Why everyone's pissed off about that now?
No, I live in southern Washington. We don't have no ferries down here.
Yeah, you're pretty much live in Oregon, but you are technically Washingtonian. But so
Yes, sir.
what's happening with the ferry contract is that the big ferry contract went away from a local manufacturer here in the Puget Sound, and it got awarded to, I believe, a company in Florida or Alabama, somewhere in the
You're
South,
taking
right?
people that manufacture car ferries.
Car and pedestrian ferries. Yeah, boats.
Yeah,
Big
these
boats.
are ferries for the people that don't know. Washington State to get around the Seattle metro area, Tacoma metro area. There's a large sound. There's a large bay. There's a series of different areas where you can drive your car onto a multi-deck 3-story, 2-story deck of ferries,
Like
and they
that.
drive them around through the sound, and then they let you off. It takes about 45 minutes. Very
And
cheap.
the fleet is aging, right? So now we're at the point where we want new ferries, and they awarded the contract to a company outside of Washington State. And it's funny because the reason why they did that was the shipbuilder in Washington was getting too expensive. There was more red tape that they had to jump through. The deadlines weren't being promised, right? So they awarded it to this company in the South that they thought would be more efficient. Okay. And the Republicans in Washington are absolutely trying to crucify Bob Ferguson over this is a horrible deal. Now, my question is that if Ferguson were to have awarded the contract to the Washington State company that essentially was found out to the fraud, waste, and abuse, right? That was found to have stuff like that in the contract. What would the Republicans have had to say about it then?
Well, what happens when you find out that the guy who was running that company was doing this all in bad faith in order to sink the deal in purpose so that they could have the argument of saying, look at this contract that fell through because of Bob Ferguson. If we want to go real conspiracy theory on it, how do we not know the guy who was manufacturing the ferries was a bad actor who didn't want the deal to go through for good publicity for the governor, so he just decided to sink it and then have the governors go somewhere else. Here's another side theory. Why isn't Bob Ferguson being celebrated for buying cheaper and more affordable ferries with our state's money?
And that's what I'm saying, right? It's like, you guys, we got a more efficient product. We outsourced, right? Just like the market is supposed to do, right? The free market and capitalism is supposed to do. And then now, it's like, it seems to me.
You know how much fun it would be to be on one of those ferry rides to bring it from Florida through the Panama Canal all the way to Washington State? Be an interesting trip.
Yeah, it would be. So, and as we close today's podcast here on the Knights of the Round Table, I'm not encouraging anyone to do homework because that's our job. We'll get our receipts. But some things that we talked about definitely can be viewed as left versus right. And in the wake of protests around the country, and in the wake of trying to humanize your neighbor, just try and as you go about your day, think about the idea of top down versus left right, because we definitely are very indoctrinated to think of the world in terms of red versus blue rather than top versus down, and how if we have more of a top down mentality, we can accomplish things, we can be more united together, and we can find common ground with your brothers and your sisters. So
yeah, I think the people that seek to divide the common people are really the people to blame. As crazy of a incoherent of a statement as that sounds, is you'll find you have more in common with the people you disagree with than the people that are kind of pulling the strings and trying to get you two to argue in the first place.
Randall, what did you just get done What did you just get done spending all last week doing? What did you do?
Salmon season,
What'd
man.
you do?
Chinook salmon, king salmon are running right now in the Columbia River. The Columbia River is the only state, or excuse me, river in the country that's commercially fished. So if you are a small guy with a boat or a guy standing on the side of the river with a rod, you're severely disadvantaged because these fish are so high prized in quality that they're shipped all over the country. You can't buy one of these things here if it's far too expensive. They cost way too much. I currently hold the record at my local port on the Columbia River for the largest king salmon caught this year out of the port. That was that guy right there.
Yeah, buddy. Beautiful fish.
Yeah, it was 32 pounds, or excuse me, 32 inches. It came in around like 24 pounds, something like that.
Yeah.
A nice fish.
But Randall, you're a damn liberal. You like to fish?
Yeah,
What the
I was
hell?
hunting too. I went hunting on Saturday and I got a turkey. I got a fall turkey. Yeah, it's actually really funny too, because the one of my best friends who I do a lot of hunting and fishing with, he's an older guy. He's in his mid-50s. We know each other through the industry that we both work in. We're both in gardening, but he's an avid, viewer of politics, consumer of politics, and he's got opinions on things, and he's not one way or the other. So it's really fun to talk with him because it's kind of like, hey, what'd you think of this? Like while we're sitting there on the boat for a while, and he's fervently anti-Trump. But that's it. He described himself, which I really liked when I heard this, and it stuck with me. He described himself as a conservative with values. And I think that's what you miss with a lot of these conservatives nowadays. The people that call themselves that is that they are willing to sacrifice their values for their conservativeness. For the look of like I'm against this, and then they find out Donald Trump did it, and they're like, well, that's okay. That's Donald Trump. I'm with him.
He's
So there goes
uniquely Donald Trump.
Yeah, so like there goes their values, right? Well, whereas he's one of those guys who's like he's conservative on this stuff, he's liberal on this stuff, but when it comes to his conservatism, he's not, if someone from his side steps over the line, he'd be the first person to be like, that's not okay. You know what I mean? Like he would call it out because his values mean more to him than the tribalism, the red versus blue part of life. And I thought that was just really interesting how he described himself as a conservative with values.
He is a patriot and not a nationalist, and there's a difference between the two.
Yeah, absolutely.
A patriot is someone who stands up for the citizens of the country for the greater good, rather than in the pursuit of nationalism justifying the horrible things that will happen along the way.
You pledge an oath. You take an oath as a political figure, elected official in the United States. You take an oath to the Constitution. You don't take an oath to the president.
So. Or wannabe dictator, or whatever that general, right? That general speech.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we are the Knights of the Wrong Table podcast. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe learned a few things, and we'll see you next week.
Have a good one.